You wake up, fill a glass with water, add a pinch of salt, and watch the crystals disappear before you take the first sip. It looks almost too simple to matter. Yet within minutes, that glass can change where water moves, how strongly you feel thirst, and what your kidneys must do next. In one person, salt water may replace something the body has genuinely lost, while in another, it may add sodium that was never missing. Someone whose pressure, heart, or kidneys already struggle with fluid balance can experience an entirely different response to the same drink. That is the part most morning routines leave out. The effect does not begin with the salt. It begins with the condition of the body receiving it. So before deciding whether salt water is helpful, useless, or risky, we need to follow one sip through the system that controls it. The first surprise is that sodium is not merely seasoning. It is one of the charged particles that allows your body to organize water and transmit electrical information, while chloride contributes to fluid balance and normal digestive chemistry. But sodium is also tightly regulated, because too little and too much can disturb the same tissues in opposite ways. Your body therefore treats sodium less like a vitamin to collect, and more like a setting that must stay within a narrow working range. The question is not simply whether salt is good. The useful question is what problem that salted water is being asked to solve. Table salt is sodium chloride in water. It separates into sodium and chloride ions small enough to move through the digestive system. After you swallow, the fluid reaches the stomach and then the small intestine, where most of its water and sodium can enter the circulation. Sodium cannot simply drift through every cell membrane. Specialized transport proteins move it across the intestinal lining in controlled steps. Water follows the concentration changes created by those particles, which is why sodium can influence how efficiently fluid is absorbed. This is the first complete mechanism. Sodium can assist fluid absorption, but the amount and the surrounding ingredients determine whether the drink is useful. A small, properly formulated electrolyte drink and a strongly salted homemade glass are not biologically equivalent, even though both contain water and salt. And that difference becomes more important with age, because the systems correcting a poor mixture may respond more slowly than they once did. If you value explanations that show what ordinary habits are doing inside your body, subscribe to Feynman's Body Code, then tell me your age and country in the comments. Now return to the intestine, because one detail explains why medical rehydration solutions are not just salt dropped into water. The intestinal lining contains transporters that can move sodium together with glucose, and water follows that combined movement. This is a coordinated transport process, not evidence that ordinary water always requires added salt. This sodium-glucose partnership is one reason properly designed oral rehydration solutions can work during significant fluid loss. The word properly matters. Too little solute may not replace what was lost, while too much can make the drink unpleasant and sometimes worsen stomach symptoms. A concentrated salty drink can pull water into the intestinal space before absorption catches up, especially if it is mixed carelessly. That can mean nausea, abdominal discomfort, or loose stool rather than the clean hydration effect people expected. The taste of the drink gives a clue but not a measurement. A glass that seems tolerable still does not tell you its sodium concentration. This is why the body does not judge the drink by internet popularity. It judges concentration, volume, current losses, and kidney capacity. Once absorbed, sodium enters the fluid outside your cells, including the liquid portion of blood. It does not immediately pour into every cell. Cell membranes and ion pumps maintain a steep difference between sodium outside cells and potassium inside them. That difference stores electrical potential, rather like a charged battery waiting for a signal. When a nerve fires, sodium channels briefly open and sodium rushes inward, creating the electrical wave that carries information. Pumps then restore the gradient so the nerve can fire again instead of remaining electrically exhausted. The signal can travel from your brain to your hand, from your spinal cord to your calf, or from pressure sensors back toward the brainstem. Muscle fibers use these electrical signals to release calcium and begin contraction. So sodium participates indirectly in every deliberate movement. This does not mean extra sodium automatically creates extra strength. A working electrical system needs the correct gradient, not an unlimited supply. If sodium balance becomes severely abnormal, nerves and muscles can malfunction, but vague fatigue alone cannot tell you which direction the imbalance has moved. That is why a person can feel weak and assume salt is the answer, when dehydration, medication, illness, sleep, or blood pressure may be the real driver. The next destination of that morning glass is the circulation, where sodium changes the conversation between water volume and pressure. Sodium is the major positively charged ion in extracellular fluid, and retaining sodium generally encourages the body to retain water with it. More retained fluid can support circulation after a genuine loss, but it can also increase the volume the cardiovascular system must manage. Imagine two garden hoses. One is partly empty after fluid loss. The other is already full and connected to a sensitive pressure system. Adding water and sodium to the first may restore flow. Adding the same amount to the second may simply increase pressure or demand more filtration. Your kidneys perform that filtration continuously, reading blood flow, sodium delivery, hormones, and pressure before deciding what to keep. Tiny tubular segments then reclaim or release sodium in different proportions along the route. When sodium intake rises, healthy kidneys usually increase sodium excretion, but that correction is not instant, and it differs greatly between people. During the delay, thirst may increase and the body may temporarily hold more water, which can shift scale weight without changing body fat. Some people notice tighter rings or puffier ankles after a salty day. Others see little visible change but record a higher pressure reading. Neither reaction proves that salt is poisonous. It shows that sodium handling is individual and connected to the condition of the vessels and kidneys. Research on adults from middle age into later life shows that blood pressure often falls when dietary sodium is reduced, although the response varies. That variability is called salt sensitivity. The same change in sodium intake produces a larger pressure response in some people than in others. Age, kidney function, hypertension, diabetes, genetics, and existing diet can all influence where someone sits on that spectrum. So the immediate effect of salt water is not a universal burst of hydration. It is a challenge that the control system must absorb and correct. To understand why age matters, we need to look at the hormones directing that correction behind the scenes. When blood becomes more concentrated, specialized sensors in the hypothalamus stimulate thirst and influence release of vasopressin, also called antidiuretic hormone. These sensors respond to remarkably small shifts in concentration. Vasopressin tells the kidneys to conserve water, producing a smaller volume of more concentrated urine. When effective circulating volume falls, the kidneys also activate the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system to defend pressure and retain sodium. These systems are not separate tricks. They form one coordinated defense against losing too much water, sodium, or blood pressure. After 60, thirst perception may become less reliable, and the kidneys may have less reserve for rapidly concentrating or diluting urine. The response is still functional, but its margin for sudden extremes can be smaller. That creates an unusual double vulnerability. Dehydration may develop before thirst becomes obvious, yet excess water or sodium may also be corrected less efficiently. This is why age does not turn salt water into a remedy. Age makes the surrounding context more important. Now we can examine the first situation in which sodium-containing fluid has a clear physiological purpose: actual combined loss of water and electrolytes. Think of prolonged sweating and heat, repeated vomiting, or significant diarrhea. In each case, the body may lose both fluid and dissolved minerals, although the proportions differ and cannot be judged accurately from thirst alone. Replacing only water after substantial losses can sometimes leave the missing electrolytes unreplaced, while replacing only salt leaves the missing water unreplaced. The useful response is proportional replacement: the right fluid, the right solutes, and the right concentration for the loss that occurred. That is the biological logic behind oral rehydration products. They are engineered for absorption rather than mixed by instinct. When the formulation matches the situation, circulation can recover, thirst can settle, and nerves and muscles regain a more stable environment. But even here, the drink does not create energy in the way food creates fuel. It restores conditions that allow normal function to return. That distinction matters because feeling better after correcting a loss can make the drink appear universally energizing when it solved one specific deficit. Consider an illustrative comparison. One person has spent hours working in heat, while another has spent the morning reading in a cool room. Both drink the same salted water. The first replaces part of a real loss. The second adds sodium to an already supplied system. The action is identical, but the biological meaning is opposite because the starting conditions are different. This is the central distinction to keep. Salt water is most logical when there has been a reason to lose both salt and water. Without that loss, the story moves away from replacement and toward tolerance, excretion, and pressure response. Now look at the second situation, an ordinary morning after normal sleep, normal meals, and no major sweating or illness. Your body has gone several hours without drinking, but it has not usually emptied its sodium stores overnight. Breakfast foods, bread, cheese, sauces, prepared meats, soups, and packaged products can provide substantial sodium before the salt shaker appears. Much of daily sodium is therefore consumed without ever tasting intensely salty. For many adults, the larger dietary problem is not too little sodium, but sodium arriving invisibly across the entire day. A salted morning glass therefore enters a system that may already be scheduled to receive more sodium than it needs. The kidneys will attempt to remove the excess, but the intervening thirst and fluid retention can make the drink feel as though it is doing something powerful. A sensation is real, but its interpretation can be wrong. Feeling a strong response does not tell you whether the response was beneficial. The same principle applies to morning focus. Sodium supports nerve function, but additional salt does not sharpen a normally balanced brain on command. If someone feels more alert after the ritual, the water, expectation, routine, or correction of mild dehydration may explain part of that experience. That is an interpretation, not proof that extra sodium was the active ingredient. The third situation is the one people over 60 should recognize most clearly: reduced capacity to handle an unnecessary sodium load. Slower kidney excretion allows sodium and fluid to remain in the circulation and tissues for longer. In a salt-sensitive person, that expanded volume can contribute to a measurable increase in blood pressure. A heart already struggling to move blood efficiently may experience extra retained fluid as congestion rather than improved hydration. Reduced kidney function can narrow the margin for correcting a concentrated homemade drink even further. Swollen ankles, rapid fluid weight change, shortness of breath, or rising pressure deserve context, not another automatic pinch of salt. These signs do not identify sodium as the cause by themselves, but they make casual experimentation less sensible. This is also why copying another person's morning routine can fail. You cannot see their kidney function, medications, pressure, or diet. The visible habit is the same. The invisible control system is not. There is one more confusion we need to clear up, because it causes people to treat a laboratory number with the wrong tool. A low sodium concentration in a blood test is called hyponatremia, but the number is a concentration, not a direct inventory of dietary salt. It describes sodium relative to the water in plasma at that moment. The value can fall because sodium was lost, because too much water was retained, or because both processes occurred together. Imagine 1 teaspoon of salt dissolved in 1 glass, then the same teaspoon dissolved in a large pitcher. The amount of salt is unchanged, but concentration falls. Your bloodstream is more complex, but the analogy explains why eating salt is not a universal treatment for a low laboratory value. Some causes of hyponatremia involve medications or hormonal signals that make the kidneys retain too much water. Others involve gastrointestinal losses, poor intake, or conditions affecting the heart, liver, kidneys, or endocrine system. Because the causes differ, correction must match the cause, and changing sodium too quickly can itself be dangerous. This is not a problem to solve by repeatedly tasting stronger and stronger homemade salt water. It is a problem to evaluate with symptoms, medication history, blood tests, and sometimes urine testing. The number becomes meaningful only when the clinician knows what the water balance and the rest of the body are doing. Medications deserve special attention because they can change the response even when your diet has not changed. Thiazide-type diuretics are commonly used for blood pressure, and in susceptible older adults, they can contribute to low blood sodium by changing sodium handling and the kidney's ability to produce dilute urine. Other medicines can influence thirst, vasopressin, kidney handling, or water intake, creating combinations that are difficult to predict from symptoms alone. That does not mean you should stop a prescribed medicine. It means a new symptom or abnormal sodium result should trigger a medication review. The timing matters. A recent medication change, illness, heat exposure, or major change in drinking habits can supply the missing clue. This is a useful reasoning habit to keep. The most revealing question is often what changed just before the symptom appeared. Now we can build a practical decision without pretending one morning drink fits everyone. Begin with the reason you're considering it. Are you replacing a documented or obvious loss, following professional guidance, or simply testing a trend because it sounds healthy? Prolonged sweating, vomiting, or diarrhea may justify electrolyte replacement, but a standardized product provides a known concentration. With no meaningful loss, plain water and a normal meal usually provide hydration without turning the glass into a sodium experiment. Hypertension, kidney disease, heart failure, significant swelling, or a prescribed sodium restriction place this decision inside your care plan. An abnormal sodium result calls for a question about why the concentration changed, not an automatic assumption that more salt is the answer. There's also a simple label test most people never perform. Estimate how much sodium is already arriving from food across one normal day. Look especially at bread, sauces, canned foods, soups, deli meats, cheese, and restaurant meals where sodium can accumulate quietly. This is not about fearing every crystal. It is about seeing the dose that was previously invisible. Then observe the body signals that are measurable. Morning and evening pressure, sudden fluid weight changes, unusual thirst, and new swelling. One isolated reading is not a diagnosis, but a repeated pattern can help you ask a much better question. For 7 days, you could record the salty foods you eat and compare them with pressure or swelling patterns without changing medication. The purpose is not to prove salt caused every change. It is to replace vague impressions with a pattern you can discuss. If you choose to try any electrolyte product, read the sodium amount and serving size instead of trusting words like hydration or energy on the front. One bottle may contain multiple servings, quietly multiplying the stated dose. A product designed for endurance exercise may contain a very different sodium load from one designed for ordinary daily drinking. Powders also become more concentrated when mixed into too little water, so the stated dilution is part of the dose. More concentrated is not more effective. Once the mixture exceeds the need, it creates a larger correction problem for the body. The same caution applies to potassium-based salt substitutes, which are not automatically safer for people with kidney disease or certain medications. A product can lower sodium while introducing a different electrolyte problem. A practical rule emerges from all of this. Match the drink to a real situation. Know the concentration and respect the systems clearing it. That rule preserves the legitimate value of sodium without turning it into a universal cure. Now return to the 3 people standing behind the same morning glass. Their different outcomes should finally make sense. The person who lost water and electrolytes may feel normal function return because a real deficit was corrected. Someone who is already balanced may experience little benefit beyond water, taste, expectation, and a temporary sodium load. Salt sensitivity or impaired clearance can produce more thirst, retention, swelling, or pressure instead of better hydration. This is why testimonials conflict so sharply. People describe the drink, but they rarely describe the body that received it. A useful habit should become more precise as you understand it. It should not become more extreme. For ordinary morning hydration, first ask whether plain water already solves the problem. Water is absorbed without turning every glass into an electrolyte formula, especially when normal meals already provide sodium. Recovery from substantial fluid loss calls for a measured solution appropriate to that loss, rather than an improvised concentration. Weakness, dizziness, cramps, or fatigue have many possible causes, so treating them with salt before understanding the context is a poor test. And if confusion, seizures, fainting, severe vomiting, chest symptoms, or major breathing difficulty appear, seek urgent medical help instead of experimenting. The warning can stay short because the central lesson is simple. Sodium is powerful precisely because the body regulates it so carefully. Your body needs sodium every day, but need is not the same as benefit from an extra salted glass every morning. Salt supports nerves, muscles, circulation, and fluid balance. The kidneys and hormones decide how much remains in the system. That entire chain begins before you feel anything, which is why a dramatic sensation is a poor substitute for knowing your starting condition. Tomorrow morning, if you see salt beside your glass, pause before copying the ritual and identify which of the 3 situations describes you. Have you actually lost fluid and electrolytes? Are you normally hydrated? Or do pressure, swelling, kidney function, and medication change the calculation? That 10-second check is more useful than treating every tired morning as evidence that your body is asking for salt. You may discover that sodium replacement has a real purpose on a hot, demanding day and no special purpose on an ordinary one. More importantly, The decisive information may not be in the glass at all, but in your pressure log, medication list, and food labels. That is what a good biological explanation should do. Not make salt frightening or magical, but make the decision more accurate. The crystals still disappear when they hit the water, exactly as they did at the beginning. What changes is your understanding of where they go next. They may help replace a genuine loss, pass through a balanced system, or challenge a system already working near its limit. The glass does not carry one guaranteed effect. It carries sodium and water into a body, with a history, a diet, medications, and its own capacity to adapt. So the surprising effect of salt water after 60 is not a single promise. It is how clearly one simple drink reveals the condition of the system receiving it.